Can you share my slides, please? So I was just saying that I've had some really fantastic times in Malaysia. So it's really great to be here. I love Malaysian food, and I love kind of the Malaysian people and the culture. And I actually learned to dive in Malaysia. So it's nice to see you've got a presentation from Dive Park coming later. So I'm going to take you very quickly as a taster through the 10 keys to happier living that Professor Mushtaq shared, and tell you a little bit about Action for Happiness, which is one of the charities this forum is supporting. So Action for Happiness is Action for Happiness is a charity and a social movement. And it was founded, curiously, by one of the world's leading economists, Professor Lord Richard Layard, and also a leading educationist in the UK, Sir Anthony Selden. So why? Well, from Richard's work, he has shown that we are richer. It might not always feel like it, but on average, we're richer than at any point in history. Most of us have more. But when we look at data around life satisfaction and other measures of well-being, we're actually no happier. And it's like we're bombarded by images from the media, etc., about what makes for a happy life, or what makes for a perfect life. But it's those things don't seem to be making us any happier, because we know mental ill health is rising. Can I get the next slide, please? It's like we've, getting into the rat race, we've forgotten what it means to be part of the human race, to what we as human beings need to feel good and function well, to really flourish. Next slide, please. And what's enabled Action for Happiness to take its message, the clues in the name, taking action, is an increasing body of scientific research. All our ideas are based on science that are increasingly looking at what does it mean to live a happy life? What enables us to flourish? And how do we learn and apply those skills in our own life? So could we take the next slide, please? But first, let's step back a little bit and think about what do we mean by happiness. I was very pleased to hear Professor Mushtaq talking about this, because when we talk about happiness, there's lots thrown around. We get the next gadget that's going to make us happy. We're going to go on a fantastic holiday to Malaysia, which does make you happy. But actually, happiness is a lot more. There's a lot more to happiness than meets the eye. It's a sense of fulfillment. It's a sense of living a good life. Making the best of our potential. And we need a mixture of the two, because actually working towards fulfillment in life, good relationships, doing our best at university, at work, etc., making the most of our potential, doesn't always feel good. It's quite hard. There are challenges, as Professor Mushtaq said. So actually some of the kind of the fleeting moments of happiness, the moments of pleasure, can help us go along the way. But we're going to look about that a little bit later. Can we, next slide, please? So the other question is, often when we're talking about happiness, is does happiness really matter? Does it really matter? Next slide, please. Well, actually, there's a growing body of research that actually happiness is not just an output of things going well. It seems to be an input to it. For example, we know people who are happier tend to be healthier. They're likely to live longer. They're less likely to catch a cold. They're less likely to have heart disease. Next slide, please. And thinking about performance, we know that people who are happier at work are more productive. Doctors who are happier, faster and more accurate diagnoses. The stock returns of companies that pay attention to this stuff outperform their peers on the stock market. And for students, we know that students' emotional and social skills really count for more than academic success in terms of their fulfillment as adults. Academic success, of course, is associated with life satisfaction as adults, but social and emotional skills count too. So next slide, please. And beyond that, There are societal benefits. We know that happier people tend to help others more. They're more responsible and active citizens. So happiness is not just a nice to have. It's actually an ingredient, perhaps a really key ingredient in the sorts of lives we want to live and that we want, the sort of societies that we want to be part of. Next slide, please. But then the question is, can we change how happy we are? Can we really do that? Aren't you born kind of glass half full or glass half empty? Well, science, next slide, please. Science is showing that actually we can. Of course, there are, we have our kind of genetic inheritance and early upbringing, which is hard to change, kind of hard to change your parents. Our circumstances can play a role, but once our basic needs are met, somewhere safe to live, enough food to pay the bills, actually our circumstances play less of a role than we might think. But our choices and behaviors, our habits and practices of thinking and doing really are the things that are most within our control, and research shows that we can train our brains, we can learn those skills and habits to be happier. So the question is, next slide, please. What makes a difference? I'm really working the slide team here. Next slide, please. So this is where the 10 keys to happier living came in. So when Action for Happiness was formed, and we're just coming up to our 10-year anniversary, I was involved. I've just come out of my MAP degree at University of Pennsylvania. Richard was starting this new charity, and I said, well, what Action for Happiness, what actions should we tell, what actions does the science show people should take? So I spent a lot of time, 6 months in fact, diving through all the research, thousands and thousands and thousands of academic studies to come up with the areas that science shows that are within our control and really make most difference on how happy we feel. So the 10 keys, you'll notice that some of them are factors, are things that we do in the outside world that affect how we feel on the inside. And others, particularly the right-hand factors 5, are more sort of internal habits and practices of thinking that affect how we are on the outside world. So, so it's the inner and outer model of happiness, if you like. And it's really important to note that this is a menu, it's not a prescription. Different people need different things and we need different things at different times. But it can work as a checklist too. And what am I doing already? And what are areas that I could, perhaps try out? So we're going to have a look at these in a little bit more detail. Can I have the next slide? So I thought we'd dip into awareness, and I think we do a little quick experiment. So why don't you say, wherever you are right now, I can't see the audience, I know there's hundreds of people there. Put your feet on the ground, feel your feet on the ground, feel them really connecting with that earth or the floorboards or the tiles beneath you. Now take a big breath in and a big breath out. You can close your eyes for a moment if you want. Just take a few deep breaths in, really focusing on your breath, particularly the out breath. Now, notice how you feel as a result of that. Just a few moments, a few seconds of pausing, breathing, focusing on the here and now. I hope that you maybe feel a little calmer, a little bit more relaxed. And that's just a tiny taster of living life more mindfully. And of course, there's lots, I should say, under each of these keys. Whilst the headlines are simple, underneath them are lots and lots and lots of evidence-based ideas for action that you can try. But it's quite interesting to say that we see that we can make a little change in our state just in a few moments. Let's try another one. Can we get the next slide up, please? So emotions. This is the E in dream. The acronym, I should say, for the 10 keys is Great Dream. So the E in dream is emotions, and look for what's good. So now reflect on your day yesterday and think about something that comes to your mind that was good, something that you enjoyed, were pleased about, or grateful. And it might be a tiny thing. It might be that yesterday was really stressful, and it was just you took a couple of moments to sit down with a cup of tea, or you had a lovely message from a friend, whatever it is, a tiny moment. And just reflect on that for, what was it that you enjoyed about that? And now notice what that makes you feel, how that makes you feel. And again, a little bit, maybe a tiny change in how you felt, maybe a little sort of warm, felt good, maybe a little tiny bit of joy, whatever it is. Now, these moments of fleeting moments of, positive emotions or pleasant emotions, there's lots of different ones, have been shown they're not just a nice to have. They've been shown to have both a psychological and a physiological effect. So when we're in a pleasant emotional state, we literally see more, we're more open-eyed to ideas, we're more open to other people, we're better at creative problem solving. That's great for learning. It's also great for our well-being and our resilience. So and there's lots of different ways we can foster these positive emotions, but there's just some, within the science of happiness, there's both these short, tiny things that we can do and also bigger, deeper things. But just to give you a little taster, could we get the next slide, please? I want to highlight that in the Great Dream, in the 10 keys, 2 of the keys, in fact, the first 2 keys, are giving and relating. And these are actually all about other people. They're about our connections with other people, because we're social creatures. And we know that not only do happier people, as I said earlier, help others more, but actually helping and contributing to others takes our mind off our own worries and can actually show to activate the reward centers in our own brain. So it's a great strategy for not only helping ourselves be happier, but helping other people be happier. Could we move on to two more slides, please? Next one. Thank you. So I want you to do a quick reflection right now. Just a very quick reflection. So the first 5 keys are giving and relating. So helping other people, being kind to others, nurturing our connections with others, lots of different ways the psychology shows we can do that. Taking care of our bodies is the E. So that's both moving our bodies, exercising, getting enough sleep, very important, eating well, getting daylight, awareness, and all the different ways we can live life mindfully, and trying out, learning new things, which is great to be talking at a university about that, constantly having new experiences, which is great for our creativity and great to keep our brains active. Just take a moment to reflect. What do you do currently to invest in your well-being? And I encourage people to see these things as investments in their well-being, investments in your sustainability, if you like. And so this is quite a nice way to use the 10 keys. So I just want to highlight now, just in the last few minutes, a couple of the keys in the dream section, the more inner section. So if we could then move on to the next slide. The next slide, please. Professor Mushtaq touched on this, but I think it's really important. If we're thinking about what does it mean to live a happier life, notice I say happier living, and I call the 10 happier life, and I call the 10 keys to happier living, not the 10 keys to happiness. Because if we expect life, that we kind of learn these skills and then we're going to be, up there, happy, smiley for the rest of our life, then that's unrealistic, because everybody's life has ups and downs. There's things that we can't control, things that happen in the world or in our families, even inside ourselves, that sometimes cause us to be unhappy. But so living a happier life means actually accepting some of those things will happen, but having the tools and skills to help us deal with those in as constructive a way as possible. So can we move on to the next slide, please? So it's really, the R in Dream is all about resilience and finding ways to bounce back, particularly our habits and practices of thinking. So Albert Ellis, who was the grandfather of cognitive behavioral therapy, said as human beings we're remarkably good at disturbing ourselves by the way we think. So there are lots of different practices that we can do to build our resilience, and I know Sulin is going to be talking shortly about managing stress. But it's important to highlight here that whilst we have a key of resilience, particularly focused on thinking, all the keys to happier living are in fact keys to resilience as well. So you can have the next slide, please. And I also want to highlight this because I know that in for people who are kind of really want to do their best and achieve well, which I'm sure is true of all the Heriot-Watt students, is how we treat ourselves, what we focus on in ourselves is really, really important. Because even people who are kind of done, got the best grades and done really well in all aspects of their lives, can actually be really tough on themselves. So acceptance is all about self-acceptance and being comfortable with who we are. It's about focusing on our strengths as well as our weaknesses, but also thinking about that inner voice in our head. Do we actually have an inner critic or an inner coach? And if we have an inner critic, which is kind of starts to activate the threat systems in our brain, how do we turn that into an inner coach that can help us be our best? So that's what the key of acceptance is all about. So can we go to the next slide, please? So we've just highlighted 2 or 3 of them, well, more than 2 or 3, I should be able to count, of the 10 keys to happier living. It's a little flavour. There is a lot that you can dig into. I know there's loads around campus that people can dig into. There's the book and there's all sorts of resources on the Action for Happiness website. But it's, as I said, it's a kind of toolkit, if you like. It's areas where the science shows that you can make most difference. Can we flick on to the next slide, please? But what the science shows is that small actions repeated over time can make a big difference in your life and in other people's lives. Can we flick on, please? So Action for Happiness is often how we end our sessions, is the world is changed by your example, not your opinion. So the clues in the name, Action for Happiness. So think about, after today, you're going to be hearing some fantastic sessions. Think about, next slide, please. Next slide, please. What action can you take to invest in your own well-being and perhaps contribute to the well-being and happiness of others? So if you want to find out more, next slide, please. There's the book, which I know I'm very honoured that that's been given as a prize. Very practical handbook, but it's also got the science that you can dip into if you want to. Next slide, please. There's a children's book, if you're interested, based on the 10 keys, but apparently young children, 7 to 11-year-olds, like big numbers. So it's got 50 ways to feel happy, currently 5 for each key. Next to, and if you're interested, International Day of Happiness, there's a free little mini coaching program called the 10 Days of Happiness, which you can sign up for. It's free and great if you could get all the students around campus trying that and friends and family at home. So next slide, please. Next slide. And also we have these lovely Action for Happiness calendars that are based on the 10 keys. So each month there's a free calendar to download, and they're translated into about 25 different languages as well by volunteers. We're in Mindful March this month. Next month is Active April. So this is the key of awareness. Next month is the key of exercising and taking care of our body. We've just finished Friendly February. So that's it from me. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here in a turbo tour of the 10 keys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the session and look forward to answering some questions shortly. Thank you.